People actually love meaningful work. They don't want a job. Like, who wants a job? But like, if I get to work on something that feels meaningful to me, like that's a peak flow state human experience. There's almost nothing better. And so if we're smart, we'll engage this AI topic in that way also. Like that, how do we optimize this for human energy? That would be where I want this to go, where I hope this goes.
Welcome to The Ambitious Introvert, the leading growth and development podcast for the estimated 56% of us who recharge by going inwards. Our purpose is to help you manage your social battery and own your energy so you can reach your true potential in your business, your career, or your life. I'm your host, Emma-Louise Parks, a former air traffic controller, entrepreneur, and a success coach with over 15 years experience. I've supported hundreds of introverts like you who dream big and are ready to take action towards making those dreams a reality without compromising their energy in the process. Each week, my guests and I will be sharing tips, tricks, and hacks on how to build your resilience, master your mindset, and cultivate self-leadership. Skills that will help you reach your goals without trying to be someone that you're not. We'll also be sharing valuable lessons and insights from our own personal experiences, all focused on one thing: helping you own your energy to reach your potential. Have you ever noticed how easy it is to list out all the things at work that drain your energy, but it's actually much harder to identify what really lights you up? If that's you, it turns out you are not alone. Most people have low, what we would call energy intelligence at work. And today's podcast guest is on a mission to change that. I am joined by Josh Allan Dykstra. Josh is a future of work keynote speaker and the world's foremost practitioner on human energy. He has spent the last 2 decades building 5 companies and working with some of the most iconic brands on earth. His clients have a combined employee count of over 1 million people. And Josh has been lucky enough to bring this work to those people. He's also an author, a TEDx speaker, and the founder and CEO of The Work Revolution, where they fight for the future by fixing work. You will learn in this episode why knowing your strengths isn't enough, but also why knowing what energizes you is the key to performance, some practical tips for tracking and optimizing your own daily energy, and how to find flow and fulfillment at work. Now, if you have ever felt like work is taking more from you than it gives, as I say, you're definitely not alone. And this episode and Josh's info and wisdom is going to be a game changer for you. Enjoy. Josh, it's so great to see you again. Thank you for taking the time to come and talk to me here on the Ambitious Introvert podcast.
Oh, totally my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So I don't actually know this, but do you consider yourself to be an introvert?
You know, I'm really pretty solidly ambivert. So right in the middle. I've done, Myers-Briggs a number of, many times in my life because I'm kind of in that world of development, right? So I keep taking the assessment over and over. And it usually nails me right in the middle of introvert and extrovert, and I resonate with that. Yeah, that feels pretty true.
What is your Myers-Briggs?
So I am definitely an N and a T, but then right for E and I, right, I'm kind of right in the middle, and for the J and the P, I'm kind of right in the middle also. Wait, no, maybe that's not right. Hold on. I think I'm an N and a J. So yeah, so J is the certain one, N is the certain, but T and F is right in the middle. Jeez, it's been a minute.
My T and F is right in the middle. I tend towards N, but it's very close to the T. And I think that's really fascinating because I'm INFJ, surprisingly. And I had 2 coaches that were INTJs, and they were fantastic coaches for me because they got the introvert, they had the J, they had all that, but they challenged my F with the T, and that felt really good.
Yeah. That's a great way to think about it. Oh yeah, got to dust off the cobwebs on that question.
So actually, that was an unexpected place to start, but let's go with it, because with your background in strengths, etc., how did you start to recognize that, people have these different strengths, they have these unique traits, we're all individuals and we can really use that to our advantage in the workplace?
Yeah, it really was the Gallup Strengths Finder, as it used to be called back in the day. So this was 2007. I was working for a nonprofit, And I had gotten to take this Strengths Finder thing and attend a little workshop. And it just blew my mind. Like this perspective of focusing more on what's right with me instead of all of the things that are wrong with me. It just completely flipped my world around. And I thought, this is magic. And so I was just completely sucked into it. And I ended up getting certified by Gallup through the nonprofits. This is before they certified coaches. They didn't used to do that, but they would only certify people that they're part of an organization. And I was part of this nonprofit. So I was able to go through the training. And then I started coaching people. I started coaching people in my organization and, anybody who would want to take the assessment. And I just found it completely captivating. So this idea of, that there are these things that light us up and make us great. And why in the world don't we focus more time on that? I still just think it's just the most kind of counterintuitive no-brainer in the world, right? Like we just don't do it, but it makes all the sense in the world why we should.
It's like so obvious, but so underutilized because so many people, especially, my audience, have been modeled a way to behave at work or a way to be a leader or skills that are, even like people say, write your CV and like, these are good skills to put up. And it's not personalized. And it's always like, oh, there's this very narrow band of what's good and worthy and acceptable. And things falling outside of that are seen as negative. And I think, like you said, with things like StrengthsFinder, it's like, oh, no, these things are actually really complementary and they come very naturally to me and they'll be very low for someone else. So someone else will value me having that strength.
Yeah. And it's one of the other things that I love about the strengths assessment, right? So there's a number of these, right? So StrengthsFinder, right? There's VIA, there's Strengths Scope based in the UK, which is my favorite actually assessment in the entire world. And yes, we can talk about any of that. But what I like about the strengths approach is also that it's so complex, right? So StrengthsFinder, you get 34 possible categories, right? Strengths Scope, you get 24. I can't remember how many are in VIA, right? So there's so many versus like in Myers-Briggs, right? You get 4 letters, right? And I know there's like, you can get advanced more reports, right? You can go deeper with that stuff. But I think what the strengths approach does also really well is captures the complexity of humans, right? That you can't just put someone inside a little box. And so many assessments try to, they kind of do that. But the strengths approach doesn't, right? It kind of blows it open and says there's not an infinite number of possibilities, but just about like the permutations of possibilities for you to have the same strengths report as someone else it's statistically impossible. And I love that about the strengths approach.
It's funny you mentioned that. I read a statistic about that very thing for some unknown reason quite recently. And it's like 1 in however many hundreds of millions of you having the same 34 in the same order. And I was like, that is mind-blowing.
Yeah, it really is. I was just taking a peek in my notes to see if I could find the numbers. Maybe I'll be able to locate them while we talk.
But I can pop them in the show notes if we can find them. But it was a lot. It was a phenomenal amount. And like you say, Myers-Briggs, I think it stands the test of time, and it's a great way. Many people do the Myers-Briggs and say, I feel very seen. I know that's how I felt when I did it. It was like, oh, that makes so much sense. That is how I think. That is how I approach these problems. But having this very personalized approach of strengths. Okay, here's a question for you. When I took strengths, I took Clifton Strengths, which I think is the old Gallup Strengths Finder. Is that right? So I didn't do it till a few years ago. And when I got my results back, I was kind of disappointed. And this is partly because of the way they were named, which I understand they've named them to be very specific. But my top strength is not something that I considered myself to be particularly strong in. The more I read about it, I was like, oh yeah, I guess. And when I told friends and clients, they were like, oh yeah, you're totally, like, yeah, you're great at that. That doesn't surprise me one bit. So my question is, did you feel like that when you first did yours? Or did you feel like, oh no, I knew I was like awesome at these 5 things?
Yeah. No, yeah, 100% same experience. My number one, Clifton strength is competition. And I had this association of, competition being like a sports thing, right? It's like, and I'm
You're
not
going
a
to be
sports guy.
competitive and like
Right.
pushing everyone out of the way.
Yeah. Yeah. So my first strength was competition. And I was really confused by it, right? I'm not a sports guy, right? I'm really a music arts guy. And so I had this association with the label that wasn't correct, because when I learned more about it, what I realized is that competition actually, when it comes from the original, I think it's Greek or Latin, the original word competition, competere, actually means to strive together. And so there's something really like pure and beautiful about like that feels like me as I think about, because I am always kind of like comparing myself to like where I sit in the scheme of whatever I'm trying to do around me. And so that part was really true. But it took me a moment to get my mind around, okay, what does that actually mean? And I had a similar experience when I took Strength Scope, which is really almost a misnamed instrument. It should be called Energy Scope or something, because it measures what energizes you. So we can talk about I'd love to talk about the distinction between these different strengths assessments if you want to. When I took Strength Scope, it was the same thing. I got detail orientation. And I was like, because I'm a big picture, strategic, futurist kind of guy, right? And I was confused by this. And so I took it to my wife at the time, and I was like, well, look at this crap. Like, this is like, look at this report is bonkers, right? And she's like, no, that's you. Like, have you met you? And I was like, what? And so it really, right, I love these instruments when they do that, right? When they show us, they highlight a blind spot for us. And the good ones, I think, do that pretty well.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because I've got strategic as my top strength. And at that period, I was moving my business away from working on more strategy with people to be more personal development, leadership, coaching. But I didn't want to see strategy. But obviously strategic is not about like, let's build out a 90-day plan. It's the big picture thinking. It's connecting these dots. It's looking at the pattern recognition, and everyone was like, well, of course, you're an air traffic controller. Like, of course you needed a strategic. I didn't really think of it like that. So now I'm able to be like, oh, that is really valuable. And that is I know that strategic thinking doesn't come naturally to a lot of people. Like, for some people, it will be the bottom strand. And so as a business owner and as a coach, that's enabled me to feel confident in that, I'm going to think differently. These people are going to come and hire me, work with me. My brain is going to think differently, and that's going to open and unlock innovation, or, help them in the way that they need to be helped.
Yeah, that's the other thing I love about this approach too, is it really, like, I feel like it educated me in a kind of diversity and the importance and brilliance of different kinds of diversity, right? So different people having different strengths, different people liking different things, different people like, right? It's just, the whole approach, I think, just opened my eyes to an entirely different way of working, especially when I moved from the strengths approach to the energy approach. Like, that one really exploded my brain.
Let's talk about that, because anyone listening to this podcast is going to be very familiar with the concept of energy as introverts who've been told, growing up in a very sociable world, shall we say, that's kind of designed for extroverts, and everyone has loud music and bright lights, and we all need to be going out on a Friday night. You can feel very othered as an introvert in like, well, why don't I feel good after I've done those things? So I think we're all familiar listening to this with the importance of our energy and starting to learn what energizes us and what doesn't. And yes, that might be time alone, or it might be time in nature, or it might be a really deep one-on-one conversation, with a good friend. But your approach is that, hey, you have these strengths, and when you get to utilize them on a regular basis, they actually provide you with more energy.
Yeah, to some extent, right? So I would actually say that there's a distinction between what I would call talents and competencies, and then actually things that energize and intrinsically motivate you. So these things live in two different camps for me, and I think this helps people start to approach this topic with more depth, because then you can start to separate skills and abilities from things that I actually like to do. And so what we say is, what you want to do is find a place where these things overlap, where what you're good at overlaps with what energizes you. So there's a couple of things here that I think people need to know. One, most of us have a pretty good understanding of what we're good at, right? You go through school and it's kind of entirely competency based, right? It's based on you get your grades and whatever, and you kind of learn what you're good at and what you're not. And then you go into the workplace, and for many people, it's the same thing, right? You get a list of competencies called a job description before you even join the company. And then once you join the company, if you want a promotion, you get another list of competencies you have to be good at if you want a promotion into that next role, right? So we're kind of competency to death, like kind of throughout our lives. What we're not really educated on is what brings us energy. And to your point, I think especially if people have gone on the introversion side of things, they're probably more attuned to this, which is great. And I think there's probably still a place to go deeper, because almost to your point, there's a whole lot of things when we think about what brings us energy. We go a lot of places, right? We go right, like I can recharge by hanging out in a small group, or by staying home, or like I really like going to the beach, or I go all these other places when I think about what energizes me. The place I don't go when I think about what energizes me is behind my desk at work. Like, what the problem is that most of us, when we think about the things that energize us, we don't think about work. We think about a whole host of other things. At work, what we do is we create a list a mile long of all the crap that sucks the life out of us. Right? That's what we think of when we think of work. And so most people have very low energy intelligence. And it's not through any fault of our own. We just haven't been taught to think this way. We haven't had any chance to practice or explore or go deeper. Because what you need to really do, if you want to unlock this approach, is you need to know specifically and predictably the activities at work that get you into flow states. And most people don't have a clue what those things are. That's the journey.
As a highly ambitious and highly sensitive introvert, I'm sure it doesn't surprise you that I don't just like things that work well. I like things that work well and are beautiful. So whether it's skincare, technology, or my bedding, I want performance and luxury at the same time without compromise. That is why I genuinely love my Cozy Earth sheets. They're made from viscose from bamboo, which means they naturally wick away heat and moisture, allowing me to sleep several degrees cooler. They feel silky without being slippy, smooth without having a weird sheen on them. They just feel elevated. During this summer, these have changed the game for me. I wake up better, I perform better, and if, like me, you value efficiency and a bit of indulgence, you will totally understand what I mean. Cozy Earth give you 100 nights to try their sheets risk-free, and a 10-year warranty, which tells you how confident they are in them, and rightly so. Head over to cozyearth.com and use the code INTROVERT for a massive 40% off. That's cozyearth.com, the code INTROVERT for 40% off. Your bed should be more than just a place to sleep. It should be your happy place, and Cozy Earth makes that possible.
You worked with some pretty big companies on this. Apple, Chanel, which I loved when I saw that. And how did they react when you're like, hey, we need to get your people thinking about what energizes them at work? Is it something that they are very open to, or is it like, well, no, they just need to do their job?
Yeah. It's interesting. So I've been doing this for so long now. It's really like these days, it's kind of like people only engage me if they are actually interested in this, right? So I don't spend too much time convincing anymore, but at least on the client side. But then, in speaking engagements and stuff, right? I'm always trying to make a persuasive case around this because I don't think it's understood and I don't think people get it. I do think that there's a story, there's a narrative that work should feel like work, right? Work is a 4-letter word, right? I can't believe it's work unless it like hurts me a little bit, right? Like people have this belief system. Really, it's really deep in there for a lot of people. And we've kind of been taught this implicitly and explicitly sometimes that work should feel like work, right? So what we have to do is challenge that belief system. So I do spend a lot of time in my talks kind of breaking this down for people to try to help them see, this is actually not true. this is a fake story. This is something, a bill of goods you've been sold, but it's not reality. Because what happens is that when you're energized by your work, you do it better. Right? And people get that, right? When I say that to them, I'm like, and you know this, like everybody knows this, right? If you love your work, if you enjoy your work, if you're energized by your work, you bring more to it, right? You help customers better. You're more, functional with your teammates. You're a better leader, right? Like everything works better if you optimize for human energy. We just don't do it. It's very mysterious to me that this is such an under the radar thing still, that we don't understand the power of human energy at work.
I think you made a really good point about how deep those narratives run, because as you were talking about that, I thought, oh yeah, like you have to work hard to be successful, which is, very, very common. And if I think about hard work, the vision I get is like a farmer toiling in a field, or someone doing like very hard physical labor for hours and hours on end.
Yeah.
And of course, in my rational day to day, I don't think, oh, I need to go and like take a tool out and cut some wheat down to be successful. But that is this backbreaking hard work.
Mm-hmm.
So interesting.
Yeah. And it's only going to become more important for us to contend with this, and even just as a species, like with the advent of AI, right? Everybody's talking about it, everybody's thinking about it, but like, what are these tools going to do to our daily work, right? We've already seen what they do is they kind of bring up C players to like B plus, A level stat, right? So like this is going to fundamentally change what it means to have a job. What does it mean? Like, so I think what we're going to, if we're smart, we're going to contend more with this question, because what the question needs to become is, what do we desire as a species? Like, what do we want work to be? If all of these tools, and we can kind of create them and use them the way that we want to, then what is a job about? And I think it needs to be about creating more meaningful work, because people like meaningful work. People actually love meaningful work. They don't want a job. Like, who wants a job? But like, if I get to work on something that feels meaningful to me, like that's a peak flow state human experience. There's almost nothing better. And so if we're smart, we'll engage this AI topic in that way also. Like that, how do we optimize this for human energy? That would be where I want this to go, where I hope this goes.
I'm not someone that's particularly into like space or space travel. I have no inclination to get on a rocket and be launched into space whatsoever. But I always find rocket launches quite emotional because of the ground crew, because of the meaning. These people that have worked for years and years on this project, and it works, it blasts off, and you see them and you hear them, cheer in, whether it's at NASA or at SpaceX or whatever. And that's what comes to me when you're talking about meaningful work. They've done work they love to contribute to something that they care about.
Right. Yeah, and I think this is a really important challenge for organizations to rise for leaders to rise to the challenge of this. Say, what are we working on that's actually meaningful and important? Almost all businesses have a meaningful core. That's why they were started by their initial entrepreneur founder. But what happens over time is that they kind of devolve. They kind of like, as they grow and they scale and they kind of build more operational processes, the way that we think about building and scaling and growing operational processes is very mechanical. It's very factory system. It's very 19th century. Like it's really like the way we grow companies is so outdated in the way that we think. It's not organic, it's mechanical. So this also becomes part of the challenge, right? Especially for those listeners who are, inside bigger companies. What you're probably finding is that this is making this whole task of you finding more energizing work, it's making it more difficult for you, because the machine actually isn't set up like that. Right? The operating system of work is actually designed to be kind of like the Matrix movie. Do you remember the Matrix movie, right? Like where we like plug into the humans to suck out their energy as battery, like they're the batteries. We suck out their energy to make the machines work. That is basically the operating system of work today. Like that is how it's designed. That's not a broken system. That's the system as it's designed. And so what you have to do, as humans inside that system is you have to actively counteract that. You can still find a way to make meaningful work for yourself by finding what energizes you, but it's hard, right? It's not the default path. And I think that's part of what we see too, and why this isn't like the default way of working. We're kind of up against a big system.
Yeah, it requires a huge paradigm shift in how many people think for it, to be effective at the level that I imagine you would love to see it affected at.
Yeah. Well, this is why I talk about a work revolution, right? So I mean that word very literally, right? I'm not talking about like, fighting and guns and violence. What I'm talking, the literal meaning of revolution is to turn around, like the earth does a revolution around the sun, right? It's a complete turnaround. And this is what I think we need in our workplaces is right now, the model is almost entirely extractive, right? The operating system is built to extract energy out of people, purpose from lives, stuff from the planet. The entire model is extractive. We need to flip that around. It needs a complete turnaround. It needs a revolution. Because what happens is if we design organizational structures that are more organic, then they actually give energy to people. They give meaning to people. They give regenerative practices back to the earth, right? Like we just need to like flip it around. And then business can actually be a force that heals the world instead of, kind of doing what it's doing now.
I know it's a little bit of a buzzword, but disengagement at work, every client I think I've worked with that's ever felt a little burnt out or, wants to make a big change always says, I just feel so disengaged, or I just didn't feel connected to what I was doing. I was going through the motions, which kind of ties in beautifully with what you're saying there. So you've got, on one hand, this, like, understand your strengths. You're able to work with them. You're able to find meaning, to be in this flow state and to, almost generate the energy that's self-propelling versus I don't feel connected to anything. I'm really disengaged. I hate everything that I do. Like, you can just feel the difference in energy from that.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I think this is one of the other interesting things about human energy in workplaces, Emma, is what I've realized. If there's one thing that I've learned after studying human energy for the last 15 years, it's that we don't understand it at all, right? Like we don't understand, especially at work, right? So, but in general, we don't understand human energy. The only thing that I've found that we understand about human energy is in the deficit of it, right? So what do I mean by that? Like when you're sick, what do you want? More energy, right? When you're tired, you're depleted, you're burned out, you're exhausted. What do you want more than anything? You want more energy, right? So we only understand energy when we don't have it. And then we understand it. But all of the other times, we don't optimize for it at all, right? So even in our organizations, right, we've got a word for this, it's burnout, right? So we've been like dealing with this, right, especially post-pandemic, right? We've kind of had burnout reduction things happening. But reducing burnout is not the same thing as creating an energized workplace, right? Like making something less bad, right? If the strengths movement teaches us anything, is that making something less bad is not the same, it's completely different than making something great even better. Right. So reducing burnout is just not enough. Like if that's your human energy strategy, sorry, you're not going far enough. What you need to do is you need to optimize for people's human energy all the time to get them into flow states.
I remember hearing a quote many years ago from someone in the health sphere. And they said, just because you're not sick doesn't mean you're healthy.
Right.
And I feel like it's like that. It's like, it's not just about let's eradicate burnout. It's like, let's actually make people energized and enjoy their work, not just this kind of middling neutral ground.
No. Yeah. And they're just completely separate things, right? This is kind of like the distinction between, traditional psychology, which studies pathology, versus, positive psychology, which studies human thriving, right? These are not in the same camp at all, right? You cannot get a thriving life just by reducing pathology. Like that is not how this works. That is not how flourishing happens. So I think about it a little bit like having a hole in your boat, right? Like, I'm not a boating expert. Like, should you fix that? Yeah, you probably should get that looked at, right? Like fix the hole in the boat. But does fixing the hole in your boat win you the race? Of course not, right? Like not having a hole in your boat, kind of table stakes for your boat race, right? Like fixing what's wrong does not make winning happen. And so we've got to start pulling these ideas apart.
Anyone listening that is intrigued, which I'm sure is many people, if they're not familiar with their strengths. You talked about a few different modalities there, but if they just want to dip a toe and really start to understand this, where is the best place for them to go and investigate?
Yeah, the best place for you to start is your own body. You have a built-in energy detector. You can tell when you're doing something that energizes you, and you can tell when you're doing something that's sucking the life out of you. You can tell. The problem is that most of us have been trained to ignore that feeling. We've been kind of pushed our whole lives. We've been taught this model of work that the way to succeed is to work harder, power through, push, right? So what we do is we ignore the way we feel. And so I recommend that if you want to start going down this path, make yourself an energy journal. And all this is take a piece of paper, make two vertical columns on it, put energizers at the top of one column and drainers on the top of the other, and keep track for 2 weeks. Literally carry this piece of paper around with you with a pencil and keep track. I'm in that meeting, that was brainstorming. I loved that. That was great. When I'm in this other meeting, it's oh my God, that just sucked the life out of me. I can't stand it. I need to get out, right? Keep track of these things and what was happening in those meetings. And eventually you will, even over a couple of weeks, you'll start to see patterns. And then the goal is very simple, but it's not easy. The goal is for you to do more of what energizes you and less of what drains you. That's it, right? It is simple, but it is not easy to do because you've got the entire operating system of work kind of working against you on this point. But if you want this, you can do it. Or you can create a life that's more energizing for you. And that's the other thing I would recommend is take the strengths approach further, right? You have to take it further than just what you're good at, because you can actually be really good at things that suck the freaking life out of you, right? If you're listening to this, you could probably think of something right now. Yeah, I'm really good at that, Josh, but you're right. If I never had to do it again, I wouldn't cry. You probably think of something right now. You're I'm good at that.
I can think of a few things for me, both from my previous career and now in my business that people, that looks great. You did that. And I'm yeah, but I was exhausted for 2 days afterwards. So we didn't do that.
100%. So you got to take this further, right? It can't just be about what you're good at. Take it further and make sure you're doing things that actually bring you energy consistently.
I love it. Josh, thank you so much for joining me on the Ambitious Introvert. I'm going to drop all of your links in the show notes so people can check out all of the work you do, some of your speeches. They can go and check out your funky trousers, which I highly recommend they do because they always look great. But before I let you go, I have a very fitting question that I always ask guests at the end of the podcast, which is, what is one way that you ensure that you own your energy so that you can keep performing at your best?
I think these days, for me, it's really about paying more attention to the stories that I tell myself and the kind of the framing narrative that's rolling around in my own head. Right? So this year, at the beginning of the year, I decided, so every year I kind of set goals for the year. I don't do resolutions, but I do goals. And this year I decided to put all of my goals inside an identity. And so I have a statement. And so one of my statements is, I am a health guy. Right? So that's my identity. For a long time, I thought, I'm not a health guy. Right? I'm not a gym bro, right? I'm not pumping the iron and right. I'm not that's not me. But so I disassociated myself from this idea of being a health guy. Then I realized, as I'm getting older, that's not helping me. And so this year I'm experimenting with kind of a healthy aspirational identity. I'm a health guy. And so what does that mean? Then it means that I have to do the things that a health guy does. And I find myself kind of challenged by that every day. And it helps me do the practices that I need to do to stay playing the game that I want to play and keep my energy where it needs to be. And so, that's kind of what I'm working on this year.
I love it. Identity is a big part of the work we do here at the Ambitious Introvert, so that fits in beautifully. Josh, thank you. Thank you so much for joining me. It was lovely to see you again. And thanks for being here on the Ambitious Introvert.
My pleasure. Thanks, Emma.
Thank you for tuning into this week's episode. I hope that you're feeling expanded to what's possible for you, motivated to take action, and inspired about how you can start to own your energy. I share even more tools and resources on my Introverts Only email newsletter. By signing up, you not only get early access to the Ambitious Introvert products and services, but you also get brand new podcast episodes delivered straight to your inbox every Monday, meaning you'll never miss your weekly dose of introvert-friendly inspiration. Sign up now at theambitiousintrovert.com/newsletter or click the link in the show notes. See you next week.